All right. Well, first of all, Bobby, in a normal year, normal circumstances, we'd be able to do this in person, but I just want to say on behalf of the Royal to kick things off, thanks for doing this remotely and sharing your story with us here this morning.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me. It's a little early where I'm filming from, but I'm happy to get up for you guys.
Well, hey, listen, let's start here. It's been quite the journey for you. If I would have told you a year ago at this time that Bobby Ryan would win the Masterton Trophy for perseverance and dedication to the game of hockey, what would you have said to me?
You're lying. um, I could never have expected the last year to go the way that it did. I was struggling more so a year ago than I was when I left in November. A year ago, almost to the day, was kind of the worst of it for me. Early September, getting ready to go back to Canada and Ottawa and hockey season, and never could have written the last year. But I'm so glad that it's come the way it has. That's for sure.
You know, I think, Bobby, there'd be a lot of people that would say, like, wow, like Bobby Ryan's got a, $7.5 million contract. He's coming, he got 3 more years left on his deal. And yet you're talking a little bit about how you had some anxiety going into the season. Can you walk us through what that's like for publicly, you're essentially a celebrity in a hockey market in Canada making, millions of dollars. And yet privately, you're going through a real struggle.
Yeah, it compounds everything and makes everything more difficult. Getting into camp and getting the season started, you're excited. You want to be doing that, and last year I just couldn't get there. Physically, mentally, everything felt wrong. Everything felt off. Driving to the rink every day, I honest to God had gotten in the car many days and not knowing if I was going to the rink. I just couldn't wrap my mind around playing hockey because of where I was mentally. I was anxious. I was sullen. I was in no good place to be productive. And then to do that in the NHL and in public really made it harder. So, eventually it just got to the point where I said, I can't do this for a single day anymore before I have to go talk to people. There's only so many days you can drive to the rink and be crying and not knowing why and not understanding anything, and then you factor in alcohol and you factor in a home life that you're making miserable for everybody. It got to be so much around me that I had to leave, and I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I made a decision to do that.
And you did that, Bobby, in November in Detroit. So you just talked about how you had to really fight through training camp and September, October. What was the turning point? What was the breaking point for you in November in Detroit?
We were on the road and had a day off, and we went to the guys went to the Lions game. I elected not to because I was trying not to put myself in situations where I knew there would be alcohol, and I didn't go, but. Found it anyway on my own, and went to dinner with the guys, did everything you're supposed to do, and then woke up the next day and late practice, so I had plenty of time to myself in the morning, and just said, you're not right. There's just nothing good about this scenario. I tried to gut it out and got on the ice and said, okay, you can do this. You've done this before. And I think we were about 2 drills in when I just said to one of our assistant coach, I said, I gotta go. I gotta go like right this second. And he I think I shocked him, and he said, well, what kind of help do we need to get you? And I said, not the kind that I can keep getting the way I'm doing this. And credit to all the guys around me, Jer and Dom and those guys that are in the room that had me on a flight within hours, and started my next journey, which has been a blessing.
You're talking about how you kind of basically left practice in the middle of it in Detroit. Do you think, did your teammates, coaching staff know about this? Was it kind of one of those open secrets? Did you shock your teammates and your staff when you basically abruptly left that practice?
I think a few, yeah. Certainly the younger guys that don't know much about it, because I've always come to the rink, done my job, gone home. So I've always been private in that sense. I think some of the guys that are older that I played with for a longer period of time knew. Craig Anderson knew, and Jared and Dom knew that I was getting help for it and having counseling and things like that, but nothing to the extent of this. And I don't want to say there was a relief factor, but I think they were happy to see me make a decision for myself based on, I had conversations about it in the past. I said, but let me just get through this road trip. Let me get through the next month, and then kept putting it off, right?
So if we could walk it back a little bit too, Bobby, and again, you've been so open with your story, whether it's back to your childhood, and certainly with this story about what you've been dealing with in the last 12 months. Do you remember the first time you thought to yourself, "Uh-oh, I might have a problem when it comes to alcohol"?
I remember some of the first conversations I've had around it with my wife at home, right? And sometimes with just a summer night that you're thinking you're out with the guys and it got the best of you, and then you essentially lose a day of summer because you can't get off the couch. And I've had a few. I mean, luckily for me, I wasn't an everyday kind of drinker, so I wasn't doing, I wasn't in this rhythm of doing it every day, but I certainly knew that I had let nights get away from me, and then in turn, you let a day with your wife get away from you, and then as you have kids, you let a day with them get away from you. So every step of the way that a new problem presented itself, I handled the wrong way. But I do remember her saying, maybe it's time to think about this, and that was about a year ago when I really started to have this, open dialogue with her about it, and I shut her down on it for about 4 months before I realized, she's been beyond right the entire time.
Bobby, I think, and again, you've been so open that I think most hockey fans know your story, know your, your sort of atypical upbringing. How much of a factor do you think the trauma and the stress that you dealt with as a child kind of led you down the path to having to rely a little bit on alcohol for a period in your life?
If you had asked me before I had, spent so much time digesting into it and learning about it, then I would have said no, it's nothing. But it's a major catalyst for it, and not to put the blame on anybody or myself, because I continuously have to blame myself for all the issues I've had. But for whatever reason, and actually I shouldn't say that now, I know the reason was because I was having so many life changes with wife, kids, hockey almost coming to an end as I've gotten older in the league. So many things have presented themselves that I wasn't, I think, emotionally ready to handle them, and somehow I reverted back to being a 15-year-old kid on my own, and that line of thinking, and it was every man for themselves in my world, and I just didn't look around to the people that were there for me. Instead, I just continued to let them down, and that made it harder. So, you would think that trying to be sober and not drink would be so much about Alcoholics Anonymous and programs and things like that, but for me it's much deeper seated than that, and it's about therapy and still letting go of some things that I hold a ton of resentment for.
And so when you talked about, and I thought it was one of the best pieces I've ever seen on the Players Tribune back in 2016, and you talked about how difficult it was to lose your mom. How much of a factor did that have on your life in just kind of within the last 3 or 4 years, having to say goodbye to your mom essentially so early?
It was tough because Riley, my oldest, was born right around the same time. She was a month when she met my mom, and my mom had passed a couple weeks later, excuse me. And there was a lot of things left unsaid. My mom and I were very close for a long time, but we drifted in the last couple of years. My mom had issues with alcohol as well, and was doing better, was doing worse, kind of up and down, and I had serious reservations about that being around me, because I already had an inkling that I had some of it in me. I just wasn't happy with the lifestyle that she was leading, and it took a toll on our relationship, and then this gets thrown at you. I didn't handle the last month with her very well. I wish I had. I'm still learning to let that go a little bit, but I did get to say goodbye, and some of the other things I would have liked to have said, but she did everything for me to get to here, and I owe her a ton for that. But it doesn't remove the last little while of our relationship, that's for sure.
And how does that affect, if at all, your relationship with your dad? Because obviously, and again, you've been so open; it's well documented. It's a complicated relationship. But how much does your relationship with your dad now play a factor in your recovery here?
Quite a bit. I think anybody that that knows the full story would probably find it hard to believe that my dad and I are pretty close now. That we've come a long way. We talk, every couple of days and touch in, and I think he still holds a ton of regret, obviously, with the way things unfolded, and we've always kind of said we just suffer in silence, and I think we still do that in some sense. But we've had more candid conversations in the last 8 months than we ever have before. So now for me, knowing I can go to him with things, and actually I had flown home to Jersey before the season to spend a couple of days there, to talk about some of these issues and get some of it off my chest. It helped. We're just continuing to grow that relationship a little bit, slowly, and it's been great.
How much does it take for you to forgive your dad? Because again, you talk about this. You had to kind of walk around with a little bit of extra baggage as a kid that most of us don't have to know what that's like. How hard is that to basically try and forgive your dad and say, look, I'm trying to understand it, and I want to move forward with you?
I think my understanding is different now. I think what I would say is that it's easy to forgive, but it's much harder to forget. And my dad and I have been good for a number of years now, but it's still never forgotten in my mind, and those things have crept up in the past little while, and less so now because I'm working with it and I'm working at it pretty hard. But slowly we're getting there.
I thought it was interesting. We had a chat a couple of weeks ago, and you said that even after, and you were taken second overall, right behind Sid Crosby in the draft in 2005, that even though you were this highly touted draft pick, and Bobby, everybody saw a great NHL future, even at that point, as a teenager, you weren't necessarily sold on a hockey career, and that you even contemplated walking away from hockey after you were a first-round draft pick of Anaheim. Can you kind of walk us through your mindset during that period of your life?
Yeah, I hate to say that hockey had been easy up until that point, but there is a little bit of that, right? I had only played the 2 years of juniors and got much better my second year in the draft. The draft would, the number would solidify that, I guess, but things got very hard after that. It felt like I went from just being a carefree hockey player that wasn't a property of anybody to an asset and a blue chip prospect, I guess would be the way to put it.
But would you say that, and it's amazing because that was 15 years ago when you were drafted, but has the conversation around athletes and speaking up about their mental health changed from the time you broke in 2005 to where we are in 2020?
Yeah, I would say that the kids coming in now have some training in it and I guess more knowledge on the subject, because it was almost taboo in 2005 to have any kind of that anxiety or whatever it might be. It was always just about putting your head down and going back to work. You look at the young kids, especially within our organization, they're young and bright and educated, and they have some background and some some knowledge on the subject. So when you hear different things about different people, they can relate a lot better than I could coming out at that age. So I think the league's taken major strides in that regard. Absolutely.
And obviously now the league was, and the NHLPA were a part, I know they weren't the entire thing, but they were part of your recovery process, because the league does have a mandated substance abuse program that players can go into. So let's go back to that if we can, Bobby. So now it's November of 2019. Bobby Ryan has left the Ottawa Senators out of Detroit. You get on a plane and you're going essentially to a treatment facility. What, like on that airplane, tell us what was even going through your mind.
I had kind of turned off. I got on the plane and I was relieved, if I'm being honest. There was a part of me that was worried about the hockey side of things right away too, because I thought this is going to be a major media thing. I knew that. I was ready for that, but I don't think I had ever been lighter. I was talking to my wife. I had called her before I made the decision to go then as I knew more about where I was going, and when I was getting there, I was able to give her that information. And then I relaxed like you do on any flight. I got ready for the next 30 days. So it wasn't a lot going through my mind, except the fact that I was right where I needed to be in that moment. And I was definitely content with that.
So when you get to a facility like that, what's the communication like? Were you able to communicate with Danielle, your wife, at all? Was there a chance to do any phone calls, video chats with the kids, or were you completely in isolation for 30 days?
For 3 days, complete isolation. So when you go in, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Obviously, this was a first for me, but everything gets taken right down to your passport in case you're a runner and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have any of those issues. I was supposed to be isolated for 72 hours to kind of decompress. I think that's more for serious withdrawal and people coming down from things when they get in there. Luckily, I didn't have any of that to go through, so I was okay in that sense. But coming from the road made it a little more difficult. I had a suit, I had a pair of jeans and a hoodie, and had to go about just getting the basic life necessities for the 30 days pretty quickly, and then you turn around and you get right into all the other stuff that the program has in store for you. So they were very, very good about me being able to chat with the kids whenever I wanted after the initial 3-day period.
When you're in there, was there a sense that I know that I've seen other athletes or celebrities that go into treatment facilities and they have this fear of being exposed, of that someone, TMZ or some media outlet or somebody's going to put this on social media and you're going to have to deal with that, and your family's going to have to deal with that. Was that a concern of yours at all while you were away during that period in November and December?
Not too bad, no. Based on where I was and being so far up on a hill, I thought if anybody got up here for a picture and it was worth it, they could have it, because it would have been a heck of a hike. And I had no issue with that. I knew that I'd be somewhere that the PA has had countless players and nothing's ever come out about it, so I wasn't too worried one bit. And it's extremely secluded.
When you go through that 30 days, I would imagine, Bobby, it's a roller coaster of emotions. At any point, 5-6 days in, or maybe a couple of weeks in, did you almost say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to put my hand up. I'd like to get off this ride. I don't know that I can go through this treatment process"?
I don't want to. No, I don't think I had any of those feelings. I remember thinking there were certain parts and elements of where I was that I could do without. Sound therapy and things like that. I knew based on the first couple conversations that a lot of my 30 days was going to be in learning how to slow my mind down, and I'm still not very good at it. I've gotten better, but all those little things, sound therapy and some meditation stuff that I just still can't get to, did help me slow down, help me reset in some regard, and ultimately start to make the process of what my avenue of recovery would be going out of there. So no, I had days where I was definitely on edge. I had days after about 10 days where I hadn't seen the kids for 2 weeks because we were on the road, where I was, they would tell me I had a slight edge to me that day, and it really had nothing to do with anything about other than being so far away from them. I was beside myself there.
What was Christmas 2019 like for you? Because I would imagine this whole thing, the timing of it, kind of came right around. I mean, you had a U.S. Thanksgiving, which for people up here in Canada, I think we all know how much Thanksgiving means to American people. So that was in November, and then into Christmas time. What were the holidays like for you?
I said to Danielle, I can't believe I had to go to rehab to get the best Thanksgiving dinner I've ever had, because since playing for Ottawa, I have had zero. We always seem to be playing or traveling around then, and haven't had a chance to do any of that. So that was a blessing in disguise. And then for Christmas was great. My wife had, she's a planner, so she'd already done all the stuff for the kids and everything. And we flew back on December 19th, exactly 30 days after I had left to Ottawa, and did the overnight flight, got ourselves settled, and Really had a run-of-the-mill Christmas. Aside from the fact that I wasn't working, I wasn't playing hockey, I couldn't do much, and I had about 4 days to myself there before I really got back into training and hockey again, to decompress. So I've had a couple really good breaks in this, and those two holidays were two of them.
When you get back onto the ice, it's January 2020. And again, nobody knows how this is going to play out. Are you going to come back? At any point, did Bobby Ryan think, I have played my last game in the National Hockey League?
In November and early December, I did think that. I remember watching some of the games and highlights of the guys, and it was right about when Anthony Duclair was having a really, really hot stretch there, and being able to text back and forth with those guys a little bit. I thought, man, I can't believe the pace right now that these guys are playing with. So there was a doubt in my mind that I could get to that pace again. But when I got back on the ice in January, it already fully resolved that I was playing again. Even if it was the rest of this year and something happened with a buyout or a trade or whatever it might be, that I could finish that season on my own terms. Didn't get to do that with COVID, but I did get to do that in the sense that I got 8 games and had a hat trick and a couple other points, and felt really good about things. And now I think the plan is to just come back and try to start right where I left off, because I was pretty excited about where my game was.
How tough was it in January? Because you had to train at first. You had to train on your own, and I know I've seen a lot of guys over the years have to do the old thing at the Sensplex where they're skating on their own. But your situation was completely different. How tough was it skating on your own in January, which can be really tough in Ottawa weather-wise, but you're by yourself and you're skating at the Canada Sensplex there?
That was probably the most difficult part of it. Chris Schwartz and the training staff was great about giving me a program and making sure if it wasn't one of them there for that day, that it was somebody at the Sensplex that could get me through the workout, that could get me to the ice. And a lot of days I didn't even have a skills coach. I just had me and a bag of pucks, and I would get myself up and down the ice, kind of come up with drills on the spot and things I wanted to do, and go from there. As we progressed a little bit and I started to keep clearing the hurdles from the PA, I got to introduce a skills coach. I got to have somebody come out and pass, whatever it might be. I had different options, and I put more skill work in, and things that you just don't normally get to do during a hockey season than I've ever done before, and I thought it helped me immensely. The only thing I would say is that it was tough because we had deemed that I'm an isolator, that I'd like to go off on my own, and they were going to put me in situations where I couldn't do that. And then this first situation I felt like they put me in was one of the most isolating experiences of my life out there. And we're not talking about an empty rink. We're talking, the Bell Capital Cup was going on. So there was 4,000 people, right? All through the building and lining the glass. And I thought, man, I must look stupid right now. But I just continued to get up every day and say, okay, this is your one step closer to being back in the NHL and playing. And that's what kept me going.
And for you, I know that one of the steps in coming back was publicly telling us in the media your story. Now, I've said this to you before, and I think I'll say it again here for the benefit of our audience here with the Royal. You didn't have to do this, Bobby. You could have easily come back in late January, early February, and said, you know what, guys, I'm just going to tell you that I was away for personal reasons. I'd like to keep it at that, and I'd like to think that we in the media would have been respectful of that. But why? Why did you decide to open up and tell the public your story about your battle?
Well, if I'm being honest, I didn't really quite understand that I could have just done that beforehand. I thought that it was kind of an open secret where I was at this point, and I was just going to go ahead and face that music. And the other thing that I had actually decided was, like, if you don't do this, the speculation is just going to run rampant, and before you know it, people are going to say you were out on a 10-day bender with ample drugs and more alcohol and things that weren't true. So I did want to clear that air, be candid. I think I've always been candid and forthcoming, whether it was family life or slumps or highs and lows of playoffs or whatever it might be. I think I've always been candid in the media, and I wasn't going to lose that part of myself because I had to do this. So I tried to give a forthright interview, and I think it came off well. I think I did everything I was supposed to do in that, and the best part about it was I knew if I had done that, you guys would leave it alone, and you did. You guys were great and respectful about it, and just let me continue to get better.
And I think what happened with that story, Bobby, is it really landed well in this market in particular, because I think so many people said, thank you for sharing your story. Can you maybe share with our audience here today how many people that you, maybe complete strangers, that tried to reach out to you or sent you notes, or you heard secondhand of how many people appreciated you coming forward with your story?
It seems to be every day. There's still some that trickle in, and indirectly right out of the gate, probably 10 to 15 within the first month, people just asking for a conversation or asking for some kind of clarification, or some, maybe it was just a thank you that said, hey, I'm starting to seek therapy, and they weren't all alcohol or drug related. Some of them were therapy related, that they just needed to go have conversations that they hadn't had before, and that has definitely been the most rewarding for this process for me, that I've been able to get people to open up about things, that I've been able to, strangers, some I knew, some, but mostly strangers through social media, who some have reached out to my wife and she's relayed the message, and just different things that have come across for me that I've been able to do. I guess made it worth it, made the personal struggle that I had worth it.
You mentioned your wife, and I think we have to bring up Danielle, because her role and her influence in all of this is as critical as anything. I know when you won the Masterton Trophy, one of the things you said was, "This is for her." So could you share a little bit about her influence on you in the last 12 months, and where you think you would be if you didn't have that steadying influence of your wife?
I don't like to speculate too much about where I'd be, because it kind of scares me. But I certainly wouldn't have been here. Now I think there's a good chance I would have finished the year, and not been in a good place, and then started another summer in a bad place, and just continued to escalate that thing, and really just ruining my marriage. So that's kind of my thought process on where I'd be. I'm glad I'm not. I'm glad that she's, that she had me start the conversation, that she, continues to be supportive. I've made mistakes in my recovery. I've overshot the runway on some things. I've kind of pulled back on some things that I thought I was overdoing in day-to-day life, and she's been right there alongside to say, okay, listen, here's a mistake, you correct it, you go forward, and now you work. And she's kicked my ass, and she's babied me all at the same time, and that's a lot to take on when you have two young children. So the good positive thing about all of this is that this has really allowed me to get better as a father, with patience and understanding, and trying to relate to a 4 and a 2-year-old, and it's got me to do things with them that I don't think I would have been capable of doing without not only therapy and learning, but without her being there to help me with it. So I did say much a family award, but she deserves probably more credit. I might have done the work and put the work in every day, but she's right there alongside me in the fight.
If I can ask as well, Bobby, and you kind of alluded to the fact that COVID kind of took away the end of our regular season, and kind of just changed our world, flipped it upside down. Unfortunately, in the middle of March, have you thought about, man, if I didn't go and get that help in November, I might not have had the opportunity to do it in March, April, May, just because of the way the world went. I mean, I don't want to say that the timing was good, because the timing is what it is. Sometimes you can't control it. But do you ever look back and think, like, thank goodness that this happened? I made that decision in November, not knowing what was coming in March of 2020.
Yeah, I think that every day. My wife Danielle had said to me too. She said, I don't think we would have made it if we had to go into this kind of period, call it isolation or quarantine, whatever it might be, if you were in the same space you were last year. especially with having a wine cellar down here in the basement and all that kind of stuff. Now, excuse me. Now we're good and we're getting better. But I hate the fact that that you have to think it was good timing, but it really was. And I said it in media the other day. So I didn't want it to be misconstrued, but COVID became a good thing for the Ryan household. It gave us a chance to decompress, as a family, and then everything switches to online with therapy and things like that. So I was really home at this point in time for an extended period, and it all became a very, very small blessing in disguise for us.
Bobby, I think hockey players love using cliches with us in the media, and one game at a time is one that is often thrown out there. When it comes to your recovery right now, are you essentially taking a page out of that cliche and saying, look, in my recovery, I have to take this one day at a time?
It's very true, and it's a major saying within recovery, and as I've gotten a little bit more, I guess, centered with things, that my therapy's been able to go from once a week to every two, right? So I have these spurts in between where I get a little anxious and I get a little rambunctious, but I know that for me, if I spend 5 minutes of my day in the morning, in the hot tub downstairs overlooking the view and just kind of clearing my head, I read my morning stuff, my affirmations and things that I need to set my day up correctly. If I can do those things and take 5 minutes for myself, then I'm going to be fine. And if I don't, then I'm going to have a day where I'm a little edgier and I'm a little, I guess, less patient would be the word. So yeah, all in all, it's wake up every morning and get to work on those things before those things get to work on you.
Bobby, I think you would agree with me that just as guys in general, we don't open up. That's just the way we think we're wired, and the way that the world goes. Guys don't tend to open up. They don't tend to cry. They don't tend to ask for help. Has this process and the journey that you've gone on in the last few years really changed your mindset on that, in terms of the importance of men, I guess, being vulnerable, for a lack of better of a term?
It has, but it would be very hypocritical for me to say that I'm getting better at that. It's probably going to be the last domino to fall for me. I did say that we've had better conversations and more openness to our relationship, and all my relationships really, but it still takes a lot for me to get there. It takes a lot for me to put myself out there, and it shouldn't feel that way. It should be much more accessible for everybody, men included, and myself included. But as long as there's conversations that keep changing the stigma of that, then it's only for the benefit, because it's paramount, right? I've walked away uncomfortable from every conversation I've had with my wife on the subject, but at the end of the day, I feel better every time I do, because at least I know where I stand and where she stands.
And now, especially with COVID, it must be difficult to have in-person therapy sessions. So what does therapy, in terms of that, entail for you right now? Because I would imagine if you're working with a therapist, it all has to kind of be done remotely right now.
It does, yeah. So my therapist is in Ottawa, and her and I have just kind of kept up a line of communication through the summer. We have our set dates, and then we have any dates that could possibly come up. I did it, doing some VAA stuff and things like that on the computer. Kind of got away from that just because timing wise, it never seems to make sense. It's always at lunch for my kids or dinner for my kids with the time changes. So I would like to get back to being better at that. But that being said, I've continued with the major therapy. And it's just a phone call and an hour and a half, give or take, and just kind of go through all the things that I needed to rehear every 2 weeks to set myself up correctly.
Do you think that, and as we start to wind down this conversation here, Bobby, do you think that, and it's amazing to think, because in Canada we do such a a job of putting athletes under the microscope and having expectations on them. And you've never been one to kind of shy away from, hey, listen, this is what I make. And we all know you make north of $7 million. But I think sometimes we don't humanize athletes. We look at them as assets. We look at them as this is what their cap hit is. Is it your hope, and I know that you didn't set out to do this, but is it your hope that maybe we start to look at athletes and celebrities a little bit differently and understand that, you know what, money doesn't take away all of your problems?
Yeah, I hope people, I guess, take that into consideration, right? I think especially playing in the Canadian market, you always see the articles, and I've always been baffled about the ones where you kind of see, oh, that guy's good for a 3rd-round pick if we flip him right now. And I'm just thinking, that's somebody's livelihood. That's their life. Like, maybe they don't want to be traded. Maybe their family's comfortable here, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, we're wearing the sweater that represents fans, and fans pay the bills and all of those things. I understand that, but I don't think you'll ever completely get rid of it, but I'd like to see people be urged to consider there is a human element to every player out there. I did say one time I've never judged a guy in a slump or whatever it could be, and that was before all of this, because I don't know what they're going. I mean, maybe someone's sick, maybe someone's unhealthy, whatever it could be. There's so many things that people forget that we're dealing with at the same time as you guys are. We're just doing it, having to play hockey in front of people for a living, and that makes it harder. People forget that there's the human element, and I'd urge them to explore that sometimes before they're making decisions based on how a player's playing.
And I know that it's very clear from this conversation, Bobby, that you've put your own mental health as a priority. You want to make sure that you're doing well. So how important is it for you? And I know you've had ups and downs with social media to maybe disconnect and for the benefit of your own mental health to limit your time on social media.
I would like to say I've gotten better at that. I still continue to scroll through, but I'm extremely private now with my, just friends and family. But I go through the things and I see some of the hot rumors that'll flash up because everybody, posts about hockey and things like that. So I see them from time to time, but it's important for me to step away from it. And not only because you can get down the rabbit hole and maybe hear some things you don't like about yourself in that regard, but on top of that, it pulls me away from what's supposed to be front and center. And that's my health, my wife, my kids, and what's going on at home. So obviously without having Twitter and all that kind of stuff, now I can shield myself from that and just continue with friends and family on there. But again, I don't think there's any benefit to it unless you're using it for a money-making thing or it's part of your livelihood. I just don't see any benefit. I'll never be back. But I do follow you. I check up on you, see what you're doing every now and again.
I got to make sure I be careful then on my Bobby Ryan related tweets. Okay, and a couple of final questions for you here, Bobby. As you get set, and obviously we don't know when the next hockey season is going to start. This is all up in the air. But when you come back, and maybe we're hoping at some point we're going to get fans in the stands again. What's that going to be like for you to feel that love in the building the next time you step onto the ice?
It'll be emotional. It was emotional in March. It was the city I knew, the fans I knew were going to be there for me. That part really never crossed my mind. I knew that some people probably weren't happy with it, but at the same time, I couldn't change that. I could just go out and play, and I did, and it went well. And I knew that, the fans that had found my email and wrote me while I was gone, that kept in touch through the entire thing and my journey back. And still do to this day, and touch base once a week, all summer. I knew that those people were going to have my back, and that's all that mattered to me. So,
well, Bobby, on behalf of the Royal, I just want to thank you, and I hope you do understand the influence you've had on this city by opening up. That you've advanced the conversation around whether it's mental health and addictions, and I hope that you and Danielle and everybody with your family is very proud of the way you've handled yourself.
Thank you. We are. We're happy and just got to continue to live it. But thank you, man.
Alrighty. That's good?
Perfect. That's
There we go. You're all good with that, Bobby?
Oh, there's the other side of your face. Yeah, that was great.
You can stop recording on your side.
Gotcha.